The rain hammered the pavement, each drop a tiny fist against Caleb's world as it crumbled. At 17, he stood on the porch of his childhood home in suburban Ohio. The door slammed shut behind him, his father's voice still echoing. "No son of mine will be a disgrace." A duffel bag, stuffed with clothes and a single photo of his mother, was all he had left. Caleb's heart pounded, not from the cold seeping through his thin jacket, but from the raw betrayal. He'd come out to his father, Richard, that evening, hoping for understanding, maybe even love. Instead, Richard's face had twisted into something unrecognizable: rage, disgust, and a finality that cut deeper than any knife. "Get out," he'd spat, shoving Caleb toward the door. "You're no longer my son." The words burned, branding themselves into Caleb's soul as he stumbled into the night, the weight of rejection heavier than the bag slung over his shoulder. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows across the quiet neighborhood. Caleb's sneakers splashed through puddles as he walked. Nowhere to go, no plan, just the ache of being unwanted. His mother had died when he was 10, leaving him with Richard, a man whose love was conditional, tethered to expectations Caleb could never meet. He'd known he was gay since middle school, but fear had kept him silent. Tonight, he'd found the courage to speak his truth, and it had cost him everything. He found refuge under the awning of a closed diner, the neon sign buzzing faintly above. His phone, nearly dead, showed no messages, no missed calls. His friends, the ones he'd trusted, had drifted away when rumors about his sexuality started swirling at school. Only one name came to mind: Ethan. They'd met last summer at a community theater workshop, bonding over shared lines and late-night rehearsals. Ethan, with his easy smile and warm hazel eyes, had been the first person Caleb ever told. "I'm here for you," Ethan had said, and Caleb clung to those words now like a lifeline. He dialed Ethan's number, hands trembling. "Caleb." Ethan's voice was groggy but instantly alert. "What's wrong?" "It's past midnight. My dad, he kicked me out," Caleb choked out, the words tasting like ash. "I told him I'm gay, and he threw me out." There was a pause. Then Ethan's voice, firm and unwavering. "Where are you?" "I'm coming to get you." 20 minutes later, Ethan's beat-up Honda pulled up. Caleb slid into the passenger seat, soaked and shivering. Ethan didn't ask questions, didn't push. He just reached over, squeezed Caleb's hand, and drove. The silence was a comfort, a stark contrast to the shouting match that had shattered Caleb's life. Ethan's apartment was small, a cluttered studio in downtown Columbus, but it felt like a sanctuary. "You can stay here as long as you need," Ethan said, tossing a blanket over Caleb's shoulders. "You're not alone." Caleb nodded, unable to speak. He was grateful, but the wound was too fresh, too raw. As he lay on Ethan's couch that night, staring at the ceiling, he wondered how he'd survive this. The world felt vast and hostile, and he was just a kid, cast out for loving differently. But Ethan's presence, steady and kind, was a flicker of hope in the dark. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating Ethan's cluttered desk, scripts, coffee mugs, and a photo of him and Caleb from the theater workshop, laughing under stage lights. Caleb studied it, remembering how Ethan's hand had brushed his during a rehearsal, sparking something he hadn't dared name then. Now, that spark felt like the only warmth left in his world. Ethan emerged from the kitchen, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside Caleb, His concern was genuine, his eyes searching Caleb's face for answers. "I don't know," Caleb admitted. "I keep replaying last night. My dad, he looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I was nothing." Ethan set his mug down, his jaw tight. "That's on him, not you. You're not nothing. Caleb. You're brave. Braver than most people I know." Caleb's throat tightened. Brave? He felt broken. Not brave. But Ethan's words, steady and sure, chipped away at the despair. They spent the day talking, unpacking Caleb's story, his fears, his dreams. Ethan listened, never judging. And by evening, Caleb felt a shift, a fragile hope that maybe he could rebuild. But the world outside Ethan's apartment wasn't as kind. Caleb needed a job, a place to stay, a way to finish high school. Ethan, a college freshman working part-time at a bookstore, couldn't support them both forever. Caleb's first step was to confront reality. He enrolled in a GED program, determined to graduate despite everything. The librarian at the community center, Ms. Harper, became an unexpected ally, slipping him job applications and words of encouragement. "You've got grit, kid," she'd say, her smile warm. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Weeks turned into months, and Caleb found a rhythm. He got a job bussing tables at a local diner, the same one he'd sheltered under that first night. Ethan was there through it all, his support unwavering. Late-night talks turned into shared laughter, then stolen glances, then moments where their hands lingered too long. Caleb felt something growing, something he hadn't dared hope for, love. But he was terrified. What if love led to more loss? What if Ethan, too, turned away? One evening, as they sat on Ethan's tiny balcony, watching the city lights, Caleb took a risk. "Ethan," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "do you ever think about us?" Ethan turned, his eyes catching the glow of the streetlights. "All the time," he admitted, a shy smile breaking through. "But I didn't want to push you. Not after everything." Caleb's heart raced. He reached for Ethan's hand, their fingers intertwining. "I'm scared," he confessed. "But I'm more scared of not trying." Ethan leaned closer, their foreheads touching. "Then let's try," he whispered. And in that moment, under the stars, Caleb felt something he hadn't in months, home. But the past wasn't done with him. Word of Caleb's new life reached his father, Richard, through a mutual acquaintance. Richard, still nursing his anger, saw Caleb's resilience as defiance. He wasn't ready to let go of his control, his narrative. One afternoon, as Caleb left the diner, he saw a familiar truck parked across the street. Richard stepped out, his face a mask of cold determination. "Caleb," he called, voice sharp. "We need to talk." Caleb froze, his newfound strength wavering. The man who'd cast him out stood before him, and the weight of that night came rushing back. But this time, Caleb wasn't alone. Ethan, who'd been waiting to walk him home, stepped beside him, a silent pillar of support. Whatever Richard had to say, Caleb would face it, not as a scared kid, but as someone learning to stand tall. Richard's presence was a storm cloud, dark and heavy, threatening to drown Caleb's fragile progress. The diner's parking lot felt too small, the air too thick, as Caleb faced his father for the first time since that rain-soaked night. Ethan's hand brushed his, a quiet reminder, "You're not alone. You're making a spectacle of yourself," Richard said, his voice low but cutting. Living with that boy. Working some dead-end job. You think this is a life? Caleb's stomach twisted, but he held his ground. It's my life, he said, surprised by the steadiness in his voice. You don't get to decide what it looks like anymore. Richard's eyes narrowed, his jaw tight. I raised you better than this. You're throwing everything away, your family, your future for what? Some phase. It's not a phase, Caleb snapped, anger flaring. It's who I am. And you threw me away, not the other way around. Ethan stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Mr. Thompson, Caleb's doing fine. He's working, studying, building something real. Maybe you should listen to him. Richard's gaze flicked to Ethan, dripping with disdain. Stay out of this, kid. You're part of the problem. He turned back to Caleb. You've got one chance to come home. Fix this. Or you're done. Caleb's heart pounded, the old fear creeping in. Home. The word was a ghost, haunting him with memories of his mother's laughter, his childhood bedroom, a life that no longer existed. But he looked at Ethan, at the diner where he'd earned his first paycheck, at the life he was carving out. I'm already home, he said, voice breaking but resolute. You don't get to take that from me. Richard stared, his face unreadable, then turned and walked back to his truck. The engine roared, and he was gone, leaving Caleb trembling but standing. Ethan pulled him into a hug, and for the first time, Caleb didn't feel like he was falling apart. The encounter shook Caleb, but it also lit a fire. He threw himself into his GED studies, acing practice tests with MS. Harper's guidance. At the diner, he earned a promotion to server, his charm winning over regulars who tipped generously. Ethan, meanwhile, juggled college and his bookstore job, but their evenings together became sacred, cooking cheap meals, watching old movies, stealing kisses that felt like promises. Yet, the world wasn't done testing them. Columbus wasn't a small town, but gossip traveled fast. Caleb's former classmates, some of whom had shunned him, started whispering again when they saw him with Ethan. One night, as they left a movie theater, a group of guys from Caleb's old high school cornered them in the parking lot. Faggots, one sneered, shoving Caleb hard. Ethan stepped in front, but Caleb pushed back, his fear morphing into defiance. Back off, Caleb said, voice steady despite his racing heart. You don't scare me. The leader, a kid named Jake who'd once been Caleb's friend, laughed. You're nothing now, Thompson. Just a loser with no family. Ethan grabbed Caleb's arm, pulling him away before things escalated. They walked home in silence, the sting of Jake's words lingering. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep, the weight of being nothing pressing down. Ethan, sensing his turmoil, sat beside him on the couch. You're not nothing, he said fiercely. You're everything to me. Caleb's eyes burned with tears. What if they're right? What if I'm just broken? Ethan cupped Caleb's face, his touch grounding. You're not broken. You're surviving. And you're doing it with more courage than they'll ever have. Those words became Caleb's anchor. He started volunteering at a local LGBTQ+ youth center, finding purpose in helping kids like him, scared, rejected, but fighting to be seen. The center's director, Maria, became a mentor, teaching him about resilience and community. Family isn't just blood, she told him. It's the people who choose you. Caleb looked at Ethan, who was helping a shy teen with a resume, and knew she was right. But Richard wasn't finished. Months later, Caleb received a letter, handwritten, formal, from his father. It wasn't an apology. It was a demand. Caleb was to stop parading his lifestyle, or Richard would cut him out of his will entirely. The letter mentioned a small inheritance from Caleb's mother, money she'd left for his future. Richard controlled it, and he was using it as leverage. Caleb's first instinct was rage. He wanted to tear the letter apart, to scream at the injustice. But Ethan, ever the voice of reason, urged him to think strategically. That money could change things, Ethan said. College, a better apartment, a fresh start. Don't let him win by giving up. Caleb wrestled with the decision. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was a piece of his mother, a woman who'd loved him unconditionally. He couldn't let Richard taint that. With Maria's help, he contacted a pro bono lawyer through the youth center. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Linda, warned that fighting Richard would be tough. He's got control of the trust, she said. But we can challenge his authority if we prove he's acting against your mother's wishes. The legal battle began, a slow grind of paperwork and depositions. Caleb balanced it with work, the youth center, and his GED, exhaustion creeping in. Ethan was his rock, but Caleb saw the strain on him too. Late nights studying, early mornings at the bookstore. One night, as they lay in bed, Caleb whispered, "I'm scared I'm dragging you down." Ethan rolled over, his eyes fierce in the dark. "You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm right where I want to be." Their love grew stronger, but so did the challenges. Richard hired a lawyer, a slick man who painted Caleb as an ungrateful son. The case drew attention, and soon, local news picked up the story. Teen kicked out for being gay fights father for inheritance. Caleb hated the spotlight, the way strangers judged him, but he refused to back down. He was fighting for more than money now. He was fighting for his right to exist, to love, to be seen. As the court date loomed, Caleb and Ethan faced another hurdle. Ethan's parents, who'd been quietly supportive, started questioning his involvement with Caleb's drama. "We just want you to focus on school," his mother said over dinner one night. Ethan's jaw tightened, and Caleb felt a pang of guilt. Was he asking too much of Ethan? Could love survive this much pressure? The courtroom was cold, sterile, a stark contrast to the warmth Caleb found in Ethan's arms. At 19, he sat beside Linda, his lawyer, facing Richard across the room. His father's face was a mask of stone, his eyes avoiding Caleb's. The judge, a stern woman with graying hair, listened as Linda argued that Richard's actions violated the terms of Caleb's mother's trust, which was meant to support Caleb's future, not control it. Caleb's testimony was the hardest. He stood, voice trembling, and recounted that night, Richard's rage, the slammed door, the rain. "He told me I wasn't his son," Caleb said, his voice breaking. "But my mom, she loved me. She'd want me to have this, to build a life, no matter who I love." Richard's lawyer countered, painting Caleb as rebellious, ungrateful. "He chose this lifestyle," the lawyer said, the word dripping with disdain. Caleb's hands clenched, but Ethan's steady gaze from the gallery kept him grounded. The judge adjourned for deliberation, leaving Caleb with a knot in his stomach. What if he lost? What if Richard's hate won? Outside, reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing. Caleb shielded his face, Ethan's arm around him as they pushed through. The youth center rallied behind him, organizing a small protest outside the courthouse. Their signs reading "Love is not a crime" and "Family means acceptance." Maria hugged him tightly. "You're showing them what courage looks like," she said. Caleb wanted to believe her, but doubt gnawed at him. Back at Ethan's apartment, the weight of the day crashed down. Caleb sank onto the couch, head in his hands. "What if I'm fighting for nothing?" he whispered. "What if he wins, and I'm left with nothing again?" Ethan knelt before him, taking his hands. "You're not nothing. You've got me, Maria, the kid's at the center. You're building a family, Caleb, one that loves you for you. No court can take that away." Caleb's tears fell, and Ethan pulled him close. In that moment, Caleb realized something. He wasn't just fighting for money. He was fighting for his mother's legacy, for his right to be seen as human. Ethan's love, fierce and unwavering, gave him the strength to keep going. The next blow came unexpectedly. Ethan's parents, under pressure from their conservative church, gave him an ultimatum: distance himself from Caleb or lose their financial support. Ethan was devastated. "They don't get it," he told Caleb, his voice raw. "They think this is some rebellion. Not my life." Caleb felt the guilt again, heavier now. "Maybe you should listen to them," he said, hating the words. "I don't want to ruin your future." Ethan's eyes flashed with anger. "You're my future," he said, voice fierce. "I'm not letting them, or anyone, take that from me." He kissed Caleb, hard and desperate, sealing their resolve. But the strain was real. Ethan started working extra shifts to cover his tuition, his exhaustion palpable. Caleb doubled down at the diner, determined to ease the burden. But the cracks in their world were growing. The youth center became their refuge. Caleb mentored a shy teen named Alex, who'd been kicked out like him. Helping Alex find a job, a place to stay, gave Caleb purpose. "You're like a big brother," Alex said one day, and Caleb's heart swelled. He was building something bigger than himself, a community that didn't reject, didn't judge. But Richard's shadow loomed. A week before the final court date, Caleb received a call from Linda. Richard had filed a counterclaim, alleging Caleb was mentally unstable, unfit to manage the trust. The accusation was a gut punch, a lie meant to discredit him. Linda was furious. "He's desperate," she said. "But we'll fight this. We've got evidence, letters from your mother, testimonies from Maria and MS. Harper." Caleb felt the weight of his father's cruelty, but also a spark of defiance. He wasn't unstable. He was surviving, thriving even, despite Richard's efforts to break him. Ethan, Maria, Alex, they were his proof. He spent late nights preparing with Linda, digging through old family letters. One, from his mother, brought him to tears. "Caleb, you are my light. Be who you are. Always." He clutched it, a talisman against Richard's lies. The final court date arrived, a storm of nerves and hope. Caleb wore a borrowed suit, Ethan's hand in his as they entered. Richard sat alone, his lawyer whispering furiously. The judge called for final statements. Linda was brilliant, her words sharp and clear, dismantling Richard's claims with evidence and passion. Caleb's heart raced as he took the stand again, this time reading his mother's letter aloud. The courtroom was silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Richard's turn came. He stood, his voice cold. I did what was best for my son, he said. He chose to defy me, to live in sin. I can't support that. The judge's face was unreadable. Caleb's stomach churned, but Ethan's steady presence kept him anchored. As they waited for the verdict, Caleb leaned into Ethan, whispering, "No matter what happens, I'm glad you're here." Ethan squeezed his hand. "Always," the judge returned, her voice steady. The court finds that Richard Thompson's actions violate the intent of the trust established by Emily Thompson. The trust is to be released to Caleb Thompson. Effective immediately, Caleb's breath caught. He'd won. The money, his mother's gift, was his. But more than that, he'd won his freedom, his right to be himself. Ethan pulled him into a hug, tears in both their eyes. The youth center group cheered outside, their voices carrying through the walls. But Richard's face stayed with Caleb, a flicker of something. Not remorse, but defeat. Caleb wondered if his father would ever see him, truly see him. He didn't know then that karma had one more lesson to teach. The victory in court was sweet, but it didn't erase the scars. Caleb, now with access to his mother's trust, moved out of Ethan's cramped studio into a small apartment of his own. The money gave him breathing room, tuition for community college, a used car, a chance to dream bigger. But the weight of Richard's rejection lingered, a shadow that followed him even in moments of joy. Ethan helped him move, their laughter filling the empty apartment as they assembled cheap furniture. "This place is ours," Ethan said, grinning as he hung a photo of them from their first date, a blurry selfie at a county fair. Cotton candy smeared on Caleb's cheek. Caleb pulled him close, their kiss a promise of better days. But the strain of the past year hadn't vanished. Ethan's parents had cut him off, and though he never complained, Caleb saw the exhaustion in his eyes, double shifts, late-night study sessions, the pressure of proving himself. Caleb enrolled in college, studying social work, inspired by Maria and the youth center. He wanted to help kids like Alex, like himself, find their way. Classes were tough, but exhilarating. Each lecture a step toward a future he'd once thought impossible. Ethan, in his second year of theater studies, was his biggest cheerleader. Sneaking notes into Caleb's backpack, "You're unstoppable." Caleb kept every one. But the world wasn't done with its challenges. The media coverage of the trial had made Caleb a reluctant symbol in the local LGBTQ+ community. Some celebrated him. Others scrutinized him. A conservative blog ran a hit piece, calling him a troubled teen exploiting his father's grief. Caleb tried to ignore it, but the word stung, echoing Richard's accusations. Ethan, furious, wanted to fight back, but Caleb shook his head. "Let them talk," he said. "I know who I am." Still, the scrutiny took a toll. One night, at a youth center fundraiser, a heckler shouted slurs from the crowd. Caleb, speaking about his journey, froze mid-sentence. Ethan, working the sound booth, cut the mic and rushed to his side. "You don't have to do this," Ethan whispered. But Caleb took a deep breath, faced the crowd, and continued. "I'm here because I was told I didn't belong," he said, voice steady. "But I do. And so do all of you." The room erupted in applause, and Ethan's proud smile was worth every ounce of fear. Their relationship deepened, but cracks appeared. Ethan's stress, school, work, his parents' rejection made him withdraw at times. Caleb, hyper-aware of being a burden, overcompensated, hiding his own struggles to keep Ethan afloat. One night, after a long shift, Ethan snapped over a forgotten dinner plan. "I can't always be your rock, Caleb," he said, voice sharp. "I'm drowning too." Caleb's heart sank. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know." Ethan softened, regret in his eyes. "I didn't mean it like that. I need you to lean on me too. Not just the other way around." They talked until dawn, laying bare their fears, their dreams. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and it pulled them closer. Meanwhile, Richard's life was unraveling. Caleb heard through a cousin that his father's business, a small hardware store, was failing. Customers, hearing about the trial, had started shopping elsewhere, loyal to Caleb's story or simply unwilling to support a man who disowned his son. Richard's pride, once his armor, was now his cage. Caleb felt a pang of pity, but also a cold satisfaction. Karma wasn't kind, but it was just. Caleb focused on his new life. He and Ethan volunteered at the Youth Center's annual gala, a glittering event that raised funds for homeless LGBTQ+ youth. Caleb, now a confident speaker, shared his story, his voice carrying the weight of survival. Alex, the teen he'd mentored, introduced him, his pride evident. "Caleb showed me I could keep going," Alex said, and Caleb's eyes stung with tears. After the gala, Caleb and Ethan walked through the park, the same one where they'd shared their first kiss. The autumn leaves crunched underfoot, the air crisp. "I'm proud of you," Ethan said, stopping to face Caleb. "You're changing lives." Caleb smiled, his heart full. "You changed mine first, but the past wasn't done." A week later, Caleb received a call from an unknown number. It was Richard. His voice was different, quieter, almost broken. "I need to see you," he said. "Please." Caleb's instinct was to refuse, but something in Richard's tone stopped him. Against Ethan's cautious advice, Caleb agreed to meet at a neutral spot, a coffee shop downtown. When he arrived, Richard looked older, worn. His hands shook as he held his coffee. "I lost the store," he said, eyes down. "And I've been thinking. About you. About what I did." Caleb waited, his heart guarded. Richard continued, haltingly. "I was wrong. Not about everything, but I shouldn't have pushed you away. Your mother, she'd hate me for it." The words were a shock, but Caleb felt no triumph, only a dull ache. "Why now?" he asked. "Because you're alone? Because you lost?" Richard flinched. "Maybe. But I see it now, what you've done, who you are. I don't understand it, but I'm sorry." Caleb's throat tightened. He wanted to believe it, but trust was a fragile thing, shattered too many times. "I needed you then," he said quietly. "I don't know if I need you now." Richard nodded, his face crumpling. "I know. I had to try." Caleb left the coffee shop, his emotions a tangle. Ethan was waiting outside, his presence a balm. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," Caleb admitted. "But I think I will be." Caleb stood at the edge of a new chapter, the weight of Richard's apology both a burden and a release. He didn't forgive his father, not yet. Maybe not ever, but the words had cracked something open, a space where healing might begin. With Ethan by his side, Caleb felt ready to face whatever came next. College became his proving ground. He excelled in his social work classes, his professors noting his empathy, his drive. He interned at the youth center, helping kids navigate their own storms. Alex, now thriving in a group home, became his shadow, their bond a reminder of why Caleb kept going. "You're like my hero," Alex said once. And Caleb laughed, deflecting, but the words warmed him. Ethan, too, found his stride. He landed a role in a local theater production, his passion for acting reigniting. Caleb attended every show, cheering from the front row, their love a quiet anchor in a chaotic world. But they weren't immune to struggle. Money was tight, and Ethan's parents remained distant, their disapproval a lingering wound. Caleb and Ethan fought sometimes, over bills, over stress, but they always came back to each other, their commitment fiercer for it. One spring evening, Caleb organized a vigil at the youth center for a teen who'd lost their battle with despair. The community gathered, candles flickering in the dusk, their voices rising in a song of hope. Caleb spoke, his words raw and real. "We're here because we choose to be," he said. "Because love, in all its forms, is worth fighting for." Ethan's hand found his, and Caleb felt the truth of it in his bones. Richard reached out again, tentatively, through letters. They were short, awkward, but consistent. He didn't ask for forgiveness, just shared updates, selling the house, moving to a smaller town, attending a support group for parents of LGBTQ+ kids. Caleb read them, unsure how to respond. Ethan encouraged him to take his time. "You don't owe him anything," he said. "But if you want to try, I'll be here." Caleb decided to write back. Just once. "I'm glad you're trying," he wrote. "I'm building my life now. I hope you find peace." He mailed it, feeling lighter, not because he expected reconciliation, but because he'd chosen his own terms. The turning point came unexpectedly. The youth center received a grant, and Maria offered Caleb a part-time job as a counselor. It wasn't just a job, it was a calling. He accepted, his heart full. That night, he and Ethan celebrated with cheap wine and a picnic in their park, under the same autumn tree where they'd first kissed. "We made it," Caleb said, his voice thick with emotion. Ethan grinned, raising his glass. "To us." To family. As they toasted, Caleb thought of his mother, of her letter, her love. He thought of Richard, alone with his regrets. And he thought of the kids at the center, fighting for their place in the world. Karma had done its work, not with vengeance, but with truth. Richard's rejection had pushed Caleb to find his strength, his community, his love. It had taught him that family isn't just given, it's chosen, built, fought for. Years later, Caleb stood at a podium, accepting an award for his work with LGBTQ+ youth. Ethan, now his husband, beamed from the audience, their rings glinting in the light. Alex, now in college, sat beside him, a testament to their shared journey. Caleb's speech was simple, but it carried the weight of his story. "I was told I was nothing, but I found everything. Love, courage, community, they're stronger than hate." They always will be. The room erupted in applause. But Caleb's eyes were on Ethan, on the life they'd built. Richard wasn't there. He'd sent a card, a small gesture Caleb hadn't expected. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was something. Caleb didn't need his father's approval anymore. He had his own, As they left the event, hand in hand, Caleb felt the past settle into place, not gone, but no longer heavy. The stars above were bright, the future brighter. He'd been kicked out, cast aside, but he'd risen, loved, and thrived. And that, he knew, was a lesson no one, not even Richard, could forget.